Okay, we need to talk about the rock band Smashing Pumpkins. Now, this is going to be a much more casual video. As you can see, I've got the t-shirt on. I'm sitting down. My hair is a little poofed out and crazy. But I digress. Now, Smashing Pumpkins is a huge band, but for most of my life, I was completely oblivious to them. Now, I remember way back in the 90s, there was a kid living up the street. His name was Jason, and he was best friends with a friend of mine that was quite good. This guy, Jason, he didn't really like me, but he really stood out in North Dakota at that time period because we only really had white people and American Indians here. Now, this kid was a different race. He was, I don't know, either some kind of Pacific Islander or some sort of Asian, maybe Southeast Asian, like Filipino, Thai, Vietnamese, Cambodian. I don't know what, but he stood out because he was another race from us. It wasn't a big deal, but what made things interesting was this kid's parents. They were these tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Scandinavian people, and he even had a little brother that looked exactly like the parents, blonde hair, blue eyes, very Scandinavian looking. But this kid, Jason, he always insisted when he was asked if he's adopted, he insisted that no, I just turned out different looking from my parents. I don't know why, but I'm not adopted. Those are my real parents. And as long as I knew this kid, even getting older, he always stuck to this silly story. Now, we didn't make a big deal out of it. It was nothing to us. We just kind of thought it was really odd. If you know anything about genetics, two dark people can make a light child, but two light people, blonde-haired people, they can't have a dark child. Now, not only was this guy dark-haired and such, he was a completely separate race from his supposed parents, but he always stuck to his story. So anyways, this was more in elementary school when I knew him. By the time, he was a year older than me, and by the time we got to junior high, he'd kind of turned into something of a burnout, I guess. If you had drugs to offer someone, he'd probably be the type that would want to try them. Me, I was an athlete, of course, and I was doing that thing, but he was going in that direction. Some kids, when they get to junior high, because it's getting to be to more of an adult level, they go one way or another. They become a burnout, they become a jock, they become whatever, all the different cliques that we have here in America. But one day in junior high, I saw him show up wearing a Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt, and it had a picture of the band on it. And I saw what the band looks like, and I saw there was an Asian guy in the band. And I thought to myself, well, no wonder he likes this band. There's a guy in the band that looks like him, and I can't think of any other rock group that has someone in it that looks that way, that's Asian like that. So I thought, well, maybe this is a band for Asians. It appeals to Asians. And I didn't really think much of it. I've never been a real big music fan in my life. And Smashing Pumpkins were probably at their peak, maybe as a little young, junior high for that. And then even into high school. They had a couple songs, but I never followed them. I never paid attention. The one group I liked back then was Stone Temple Pilots. But anyways, I just didn't pay attention. I was thinking that, well, maybe this is something for Asians, and I guess I can see why he would like that band. There's a guy in it that looks like him. So the years pass on. I don't even really think about this. But years later, I find myself in the Philippines. And I was outside of Araneta Coliseum, which is famous because Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier for their third and final fight, which is known as the Thrilla in Manila. But Smashing Pumpkins were coming and they were going to give a concert, and they had all these banners all over advertising, and the banners actually said Smashing Pumpkins. Pumpkin. Pup, P-U-P-K-I-N-S. Misspelling. But obviously I knew it was for the band Smashing Pumpkins, but somehow that kind of confirmed in my mind that this is a band for Asians. So I didn't think much of it. And then many years later, I see a news story about Billy Corgan. And apparently he had a beef with Anderson Cooper because apparently Billy Corgan, he's a huge lover of cats. And I'm somewhat of a cat lover myself. Unfortunately, yesterday we had to put my parents' cat to sleep, but I've always liked cats myself and thought they're just cute, adorable animals. He likes cats, and he appeared on the cover of a cat magazine. And because of this, CNN's Anderson Cooper decided to take shots at him and try and make fun of him and say that he's uncool. Well, Billy Corgan called out Anderson Cooper as a globalist and a shill and stuff, and I thought, well, not only does this guy like cats like me, but he's calling out Anderson Cooper for being a globalist and a shill, someone that puts out fake news. And I thought, you know, there's not many mainstream celebrities that will call out CNN and call out Anderson Cooper on that. I thought, well, this guy, regardless of what his music is, which I don't think I would necessarily like myself, regardless of what his music is, he seems like a cool guy. I like this guy. This would probably be a guy that I would hang out with. But anyways, recently, I think I listened or watched one video of Smashing Pumpkins on YouTube. And you know how it is with the YouTube recommendations. You watch one video about something, it starts recommending you a lot of other videos about the same thing. So I've listened to some of their music, and I have to say, it's actually pretty good. A lot of their music is very good. And then I started watching interviews, and Billy Corgan, he's very different than your typical 90s rock star in that he sounds very intelligent, he's very articulate, and he doesn't seem like a guy that uses drugs. He doesn't have to get drugged up or get drunk to go out and play music or to go on a TV show and speak. He's comfortable enough to articulate himself and to not have to rely on that crutch of drugs or alcohol. So that impressed me. But I was watching an interview that I thought was really interesting. Well, first I watched a music video, and they had a woman back in the day in the 90s in their original lineup. They had a woman in the band, and a lot of people were commenting, oh, she's really cute, this girl. And then it got me thinking, well, what does she look like now? So I did a search, and I was like, wow, she has certainly changed, and not for the better, as we all do, so I don't want to jump on her for that. But apparently she got very into plastic surgery, and she's into drugs and that kind of stuff. Things that are definitely not going to help you hang on to your looks as much as possible. And apparently she's childless, so she doesn't have the same motivation a lot of people would have. But one of the first things I saw when I searched her was an article criticizing Billy Corgan because she said that he changed since having a kid, and he's even this Trump supporter now. And I'm like, what? He is? And regardless of what you think of Trump, the people that are Trump fans and Trump supporters, those people are usually pretty cool people, and they have their hearts in the right place at least. And she says he's changed since he's had a kid. Well, she can't understand this because she's childless, but if you've been following my journey either on my other channel or on this channel, I talk a lot about how much I've changed and how much it's transformed you. And if you don't change after having a kid, there's something majorly wrong with you. Either you're a complete sociopath that doesn't care about other people, even your own flesh and blood, or maybe you had a dysfunctional father or parent that didn't care about you because maybe he didn't get those values from his father. There's something wrong there. Any normal person would change hugely after having a child. You guys have heard me talk time and time again, both on my other channel and this channel, just what a radical change I've made, and how I have so many views on the world now that I never thought or expected that I would have. But anyways, I thought that was highly interesting. Not only is she this childless drug addict that's just a complete wreck apparently, but she's criticizing a guy for changing after having a kid, which is what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. But something else I found interesting, going back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the video, I saw this interview where the drummer and Billy Corgan were on a talk show, and the host asked Chris Isaak, actually, he asked, what did the other members, meaning the Asian man and the woman, what did they contribute to the band?
What did your former bandmates, James and Darcy, what did they bring to the Pumpkins, and why did that change?
I'm looking at him because he'll give the better political answer.
No, I won't.
Oh, good. Give me the non-political answer.
High fashion.
Ouch.
Nah, he doesn't need that.
I think they brought an artistic aesthetic that Billy and I probably wouldn't have had alone. They were the kind of cool people in the band. They had their ear to the street. They kind of knew it was cool. Like, James and Darcy looked like they could play their instruments, but Billy and I could really play ours.
Okay.
That's probably the simplest way to put it.
The rumor I always hear is that you play everything except the drums. And that you know, left to your, if somebody could give you a stick that you could reach over and push record, you guys, the two of you guys can make the record. Is that?
Well, we did. That's the thing. That was always sort of the weird thing that we had to live with, because when we first started working with Butch, particularly on our first album, he said, they can't play. And so we'll be here all year and never finish, and you can, so you do it.
And the drummer just told them, aesthetics. They contribute aesthetics. They look like they know how to play their instruments, whereas Billy and I actually know how to play our instruments. And apparently they didn't even play on the albums because they're not at the level of a professional musician. They couldn't do what was expected or needed of them to do on the albums. So Billy Corgan played most of the instruments on the albums, and it was the other guys. They just had them out there for looks. And I saw an interesting comment on YouTube kind of telling someone about this, that they didn't play on the albums. And Billy Corgan, he had this idea for a band to kind of stand out. So he decided that he's going to get a woman and an Asian man in it. Now, I can understand getting a somewhat cute girl because it's usually guys that are into rock bands and they're going to want something to look at other than just these dudes. But it's also kind of interesting that supposedly, at least according to this comment, that he was thinking, let's get an Asian man in it. And I think back to that kid Jason in my neighborhood. Well, maybe it worked on him. I don't know. Maybe he just loved them because he thought their music was great. But I have to think on some level, having a guy that looks like him. Now, if someone came to me and they said, what about you having a band if we were just going to create something from a marketing viewpoint, which Billy Corgan's a good musician, good songwriter, all that. But he also had the foresight to think about marketing and putting a woman in there so the guys would have something. But for somehow he came up, supposedly, with the idea to put an Asian man in there. Like, that's maybe not something I would have thought of. But Smashing Pumpkins, apparently, they're not just for Asians.